And hello, everyone. Welcome to the Real Estate Show on KCMX News Media 880. Pete Belcaster and Joe Brett, the Real Estate Guys, with you today. And thanks for joining us here on KCMX in our New Year's kind of program, end of 2018, hitting into 2019. And Joe, we are so lucky today because we got two, friends, old faces in that is Sal Esquivel and Jan, State Representative Sal and Jan here today as they're getting ready to end their careers up in Salem in public service and retiring. And I'm envious of that part of it anyway. So it's great to have them both here, right?
No, and as you mentioned in our radio open, both real estate brokers, great perspective. Yeah. Sal and Jan have both seen the encroaches on the industry through the legislature and things that our industry monitors very closely and lobbies very hard to make sure that new legislation is equitable and fair for people.
Well, and so how is it weird at the end? First of all, welcome to our show. Sal's been here before. Jan, your first time with us, I think, but what do you think of getting at the end of this thing?
Well, it's 22 years. This will be, when I finish up, I'll have 22 years, and I'll be out of office midnight of January 13th.
Yeah.
And then they'll swear in a new legislature at 10 o'clock the next morning.
Yeah.
So it's been a very interesting from local government up to state government and then kind of in between. And it's nice to be able to, it's been an honor for me to ride the bus. And I always looked at it like I rode the bus, and if people wanted me to continue to ride the bus and represent them, they'd buy me a ticket. So I didn't worry about keeping my job. I just went up and did it.
Yeah, well, good for you. And you were with them all the way through this, weren't you?
I was, Pete. Sal and I have just been married 17 years, and 15 of those years we spent in Salem.
You've been in Salem. My goodness, I didn't realize that.
So I didn't actually get a ticket on the bus. I just got to ride along on the sidecar there, for 15 years. But,
But it was good he took you with.
It was a great experience.
I was going to say, the experience of that, of being in public office, is really something, isn't it? And for you, a long time of doing it, it's neat.
Well, it takes a while for people to adjust to that. They think, and I thought the same way, go up there and we'll just change everything.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't.
And you have some power when you have 30 other representatives that agree with you, 16 senators and a governor, then you have something going.
Yeah.
But it takes quite it's like herding cats. Talking about that many people.
Can't imagine all the things that you deal with when you do that. I might say one thing, Sal, back in the day when we were started back down at SOU, Joe, when Sal was first elected to the city council, you and Skip Knight, councilors, who else was it back
Jim Key.
Jim Key,
Bill Moore.
They were the ones who got the city
Linda
of Medford.
Casey.
They were the ones that got the city of Medford first getting government out, transparency, putting it on cable back though. Now it's on the internet, and you still do those things and still do those meetings. So, you were the first ones to do that.
Yeah,
and,
Skip and I did, over 100.
We did lots of shows
Ward
together.
2 Town Hall.
Yeah.
That were just specific to Ward 2 and issues to the city of Medford and the Medford Forum show that Mel Winkleman. He was the first one that kind of dipped his toe in, and he even, like Sal and Skip, paid for their own show to start that ball rolling and communicate with citizens.
Yeah.
I think it's a very important element still within. And now today it streams live on the internet. You don't just have to have cable TV, and it's all archived. You go back, and if you say you can't get at the information, you haven't tried hard enough.
And of course, the legislature was on too, so that also transferred to Salem, where people could actually have it live in their place in the building. Like that.
Kurt Bennett and Rob Patridge and us, we were all together, and we voted unanimously, I believe, to go ahead with the SOU.
Well, it was a while. It took a lot of. It was good and it was great, and it's not changed.
That was great recall because I was trying to remember the roster. Like, people asked me about the '97 South Medford team that we covered. It's hard to go back that far sometimes. You got them all, I think.
What you may not know is that Sal, for a long time, you were the only licensed real estate broker in the legislature. Is that correct? Is that right?
Correct.
There was nobody else there.
Nope.
When you leave, is there going to be a broker in there, or is there no two? There will be two. Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay, well that's good. That's good to know because you're the only one for doing that. Real estate issues are just always there in the legislature, aren't they?
And you're going to have some coming at you again.
Well, I understand that, but you see a lot of them.
They're on the way, and they'll always be there. They'll always be there. Trust me. They'll always have something going that has to do with your profession.
Okay. But tell us some of the things that you've actually had to fight for or deal with. Well, I know mortgage interest deductions is always a big one that we always talk about.
Well, I remember. Well, that's an ongoing battle, on and off, on and off, on and off. You know, with the taxation process. But also, I remember when the crash happened, there was a bunch of people up there that wanted to make a big show, so they attacked certain types of loans. You know, which was unnecessary because like a no doc loan. Well, no doc loans specifically for some people, and it works well for some people, but you don't just do away with it just because of the whole thing, and that's what the attempts were and things of that nature. We had a lot of people that didn't understand the lending industry that were trying to make decisions on the lending industry. Well, that's the biggest thing.
That's what happens. They're making decisions and don't really know what those issues are, do they? That's part of the problem.
A lot of them don't even know what they don't even know about
it. Really complicated.
That's right.
Tell me about the real estate lobbyists, because they seem to be, I don't know how good they are, whatever, but they seem to be there. Tell me about your experience in lobbying the real estate people, how they do that or what's going on.
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about that.
She's the gatekeeper.
Because
I'm the gatekeeper. I was looking at her. Yeah.
So, working with the lobbyists is really interesting. I think that initially, and probably from our media experience, you kind of think they're the bad guys,
Sure.
But
they're portrayed that way.
They are
the media.
very much portrayed that way. But a good legislator is maybe only as good as the trust he has in the lobbyists. Because in our case, with being real estate agents, we have some background in that, but you don't have a lot of background in everything else that's going on up there. So you need those lobbyists to inform you and help you with the process. So I feel like over our time, all of our real estate lobbyists, they probably were, maybe they were more welcome in our office than they were in some. But they were all, really good lobbyists. And I want to say, Pete, that one of the biggest days up there is Real Estate Day. Realtor Day at the Capitol. And I'm telling you what, they put in a lot of effort and a lot of work. From my job, my biggest job was making sure they had a room to meet in, because that's always difficult in the Capitol. They don't have a lot of extra meeting rooms, but we do that real early on, and they always they showed up in numbers. The numbers grew as the years went by.
This was a big event. Well, there's so much out there. We're always amazed, I think, in the years of doing real estate that we've been doing, almost 10 years now, is how big the industry actually is when you include lenders and appraisers and contractors and builders and realtors and offices. It's an enormously impactful economic impact in our state.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why it's so powerful, I guess, because it's so big, right? And that's how it works.
That's how it works. It's kind of like follow the money, but.
And that's the way it goes. Tell me about, again, we're sitting down here all the time and we talk about stuff on our shows, we see statistics, all sorts of things, but there's so many issues regarding housing in our state right now, Sal, from homeless, from tiny homes, what you're building, that seems to be growing more, a bigger issue each time, right?
Even one size fits all.
I don't know what
building regulation for the state.
Housing is such a big thing, right? That you deal with every year in every session, right?
Well, yeah, they've been dealing with housing ever since I walked through the door up there. About affordable housing, and the one thing I found out about affordable housing: if the government has anything to do with building it, it won't be affordable.
Well,
because it costs so much, because you have to. With taxpayer money, you have to do 30% more with the wage.
And we've had guests here who built privately around the state for so much less than what was done in Medford here, across from the Mill Tribune there at the place. It was subsidized. I mean, it's really interesting. But they talk about it, but they keep. Is there a way to finish it? Is there a way to deal with it? What's the state's role, do you think, in it? Or where's it going to go?
Well, I think the state needs to really realize that maybe they're part of the problem. And what I mean by that is I was at the Home Builders Association Christmas dinner 2 years ago, and they made a statement that really stuck in my mind. 40% of your new home's cost is government regulation.
We've heard that from
that just
Brad. We've heard that a lot.
Me.
Yeah. And you see it. Joe sees that because the systems development charges, and we've had all this thing coming up to continue this.
Well, SDCs, you take inspections, you take permits, you take time. Time's money with people, and it could possibly be that high.
And now cities are looking at ways to reduce or defer those fees till the end of the project, or find ways to incentivize developers because we need to meet that demand, but we've made it really hard for them for it to pencil.
But it doesn't matter whether the 40%'s on the front end or the back end. It's still there. Still there.
Yeah.
Someone's going to pay for it, and it's not going to be the developer, all of them. It's going to be passed on to the cost of the consumer.
And on these tiny houses they're talking about $400 to $600 a square foot. And I'm going, that's insane.
Well, but we're seeing a lot of it. We're seeing a lot more housing like that. The state has to change its rule. Remember, Joe, the small, tiny houses that we've been talking about, they're on wheels, and they need to get they're a or an RV, I guess it is, versus a home. And how can you put them on stations? And then the cities are all making changes to their additional dwelling unit rules and things like that. So we're seeing a whole lot of movement out there.
Well, it's always that way. You flip a rock inside of a puddle, and then it expands out the wave, and that's exactly what happens because no one asks the what then question. If you do that, what's going to happen? And sometimes the repercussions are pretty drastic.
Well, we're still expanding. I think we're building the wrong things. We see so many 3 and 2s, and that's popular, but people want smaller units, multiple units, and things like that. Because where are we going to put all these people? We can't keep going out further and further, building more and more of the same stuff that's out there. That's there. It just makes you crazy when you with clients and everything, right?
Property valuations have gone up across the board, and interest rates, if they tick up, that buying power comes down, and people are going to have, especially first-time home buyers and young families that want to get in the home ownership game, are going to have options out there that are more affordable.
Yeah.
Than just being able to buy your own 3-2, even if it's 12 to 1,400 feet.
Well, in the affordability question is coming back up in our own counties again as well, and how do you do it in the lendings and kinds of things. But you didn't deal with much of that up there, or did you, of this whole thing? Would you say
no,
in Salem?
Not too much.
It really isn't the legislature's purview almost.
Shouldn't be.
It's just the land use area, I guess, is that
and we have one of the most restrictive land use laws in the United States, the state of Oregon.
Sure.
It's all centralized. No other state has ever adopted that.
And do you think that at the end of the day, as you leave, that those have been good for Oregon?
I don't really see much difference between what Oregon does and what other states do, other than red tape.
Really, you think so?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because look at Portland, how it sprawls.
Well, it
was supposed to stop sprawl.
Okay, there's different rules, though. One for the Willamette Valley and one for the rest of us, right? Isn't that what we've been saying for years? 2 Oregons, yeah.
Right.
And you're right, the sprawl that's taking place up there that continues to go. And look at the problems and the issues that they have. Mm-hmm. How are we doing that here? And Joe thinks it's pretty good what's going on, the way they're doing it, and we still have a lot of people coming our way into our valley, and that is not going to change. We're with State Representative Sal Esquivel and his wife Jan here on the Real Estate Show as we kind of conclude as they're getting ready to take off to Idaho, and Sal ends his political career here, and insights of what the real estate issues have been in Salem, and we got a whole lot more to talk about when we come back after this. And welcome back to the Real Estate Show here on KCMX News Media 880. Pete Belcaster and Joe Brett, the real estate guys, with you. Happy New Year to you as well as we start 2019. My goodness. Isn't that amazing? I remember Y2K. Remember all the fuss that went over Y2K back then? The computers were going to glitch and nothing was going to work. And boy, that seems like a long time ago now. As we sit here now to almost to 2021. Anyway, that's crazy. State Representative Sal Esquivel and Jan Esquivel are with us today. Sal ends his political life in a few weeks after many years, 22 years of service to Medford in the Valley. You really enjoyed representing Medford itself, didn't you?
I wouldn't say he ends his political life. He just has to get off the bus.
Well, that's right. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe.
The political world.
He's still got some contributions, I'm sure he can make, some guidance and wisdom he could lend.
You know what I meant. You two really liked representing basically the city of Medford, didn't you, a lot?
Well, I love Medford. I grew up here, and my family's been here since the 1870s and 1880s, and this has been quite a good place for us, and I really enjoyed and had the great honor of representing the city itself.
Yeah, and you had a great district, And you two walked probably every inch of that district in your campaigns, didn't you?
At least once.
Yeah.
At least once, yeah. You know, but the nice thing about having just Medford, you know, because I used to say, people would say, well, what does your district cover? And I'd say, well, it's really, truly just Medford proper. You know, we didn't have any outlying areas. And then you look at some of these other districts like, you know, Cliff Bentz from Eastern Oregon, or even Gene and Josie Wisnett from Sun River that had the donut. Bend was the hole, and they had the donut around it, you know.
Yeah.
And so you end up with different zip codes and different, you know, whole different areas. And for us, just having Medford proper made our campaigning easier, you know. And as the digital world and the media changed, we were able to do things like on Facebook, we could pick up 01 and 04. You know, whereas other people had 5 or 6 sometimes, you know, zip codes that they were dealing in. And so it was, you know, from that angle, it was pretty easy. And then I think, too, you know, a lot of people knew both of us. And so that made it easier, too. I mean, we were among friends most of the time.
You did know lots of people.
Well, then you take Senator Bentz, and now it's Senator Bentz. He has a district that's larger than a lot of states.
Yeah. That's really true.
It's a lot of ground cover.
And I got a kick out of Senator Ferrielli. He was the senator before Senator Bates or Senator and Bentz, and he said, quote, "If I see 2 people standing in the back of a pickup, leaning on the back of a pickup, I stop because it's a town hall meeting out here."
That's right.
Interesting. Your district encompasses the city of Medford. And your replacement is coming from the city council where you did. I think that's an interesting. That's a strength in the relationship, because the cities in our region need that representation, need the voice in Salem, and work very closely with our state representatives in that regard throughout our region on the issues that face our region.
Well, and prior to me was Rob Patridge, who was on the city council.
Right.
So that's kind of been the bench for us, you know, as a city council.
And Medford deserves to have a representative there, its own district, I think, because it's a city of great size, of importance. And I hope they don't mess with that when they redo those things in 2 years. But who in the heck knows what's going to be done?
If you're versed in the issues of the city of Medford, you're versed in the issues of the region very well as well.
Yeah. Let me ask you about what you all did regarding the legislature, regarding the cannabis issues that came up in Oregon, because we talked about those a lot on our shows, with land prices and people doing crazy things. Everyone's going to make $1 million. We're going to grow. We're going to do these things. It really affected real estate here in Jackson and Josephine counties. I don't know what the rest of the state was like, but what was it like in Salem dealing with this? Are you happy? Are you pleased the way it came out, or what?
Actually, Carl Wilson, you know, Carl Wilson
from
he was our lead person on that. And he was the one we put all the trust in to go ahead and negotiate that on out. And I thought he did a pretty good job. He steered us on what we should do and so on and so forth. So, I mean, if you really want to get into detail of that, you wanted to talk to Carl. But as for the cause and effect, it did have a cause and effect on the real estate market, because all of a sudden people were coming in with, imagine, a lot of cash sales.
Oh, yes, a lot of them are cash sales.
You know, and they were coming in purchasing property. And like we were talking about cedar, the cost of cedar, we have cedar on our property in Idaho, and the cost of that is now $1,400 1,000 delivered. Well, it's because everyone's building cedar fences around their marijuana pads.
Cannabis grows.
It does
supply and demand we understand in the real estate industry.
Don't doubt that. Go out, drive out to the Applegate, and you'll see it. That's out there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and it does have a cause and effect on us. Now, as for bringing in all this great tax money, I don't think it's going to bring in as much as anticipated. You know, it's probably be $100 million a year or something, biennium.
See, Sal,
it settles out.
$100 million here, $100 million there. It does just the kind of thing.
We throw away so much money in this state; it's unbelievable, and yet no one listens.
I know. It's that part is shocking.
Apparently, the majority of us think everything is fine. And we should just stay on the same track. Seriously, that's the voice of the Oregon voters.
That's
evidently,
right.
because
that's what they're saying.
You know, I mean, I can think of about $2 billion right off the top of my head in a biennium.
Well, I mean, the things have gone up. They spend lots of money. That's what the governments are good for. But I will just tell you that they're addicted to cannabis money as they're addicted to lottery money, and that's going to be a big thing. It's a new source of revenue, and so they're they're happy cats. If that's $100 million, whatever it comes to, governments like that. So, but it's just the effect of what it's caused. And now you're seeing sales of these places go. You can't finance them, of course, because you have to remove all the cannabis paraphernalia around them. I mean, so it's caused a lot of people losing money. The value of properties in the rural areas have gone slightly, not like this. Sales are down though, but the number of sales in the rural areas are down.
Way down, and that's where the taxes will level out to a realistic level in several years. We'll really see what the state will get to work with.
Well, and we'll see what the OLCC finally does. They've opened up their new fancy office, next to John L. Scott in Medford Center. We'll see if they do it. The problem to me was that they never limited the number of applications. Therefore, they keep giving them. They keep issuing these things, and eventually the market will change out. But it had an effect on the real estate market, no question. Maybe in Jackson and Josephine counties the most,
primarily,
because we had the most growers, the most licenses,
the best climate for it.
And on it goes. So we'll see where that goes. Rental housing. We got a couple of minutes.
Well, there's a bill in right now to do a statewide rental control.
A statewide rent control.
Rent control.
When you say rent control, you're talking really of.
It's New York.
Well, how do you get housing? How do you get more rental housing? How do you get apartments? The cost of them, the prices went up, and the biggest thing still in rental for persons in rentals. The average renter in our country has a net worth of around $5,200. The average homeowner in our country has a net worth of over $230,000. What a pitch for home ownership, right? I mean, that is still huge. But single family homes, things like that, you're saying that's even in jeopardy in
correct.
Some clients.
There's also a potential bill coming that will limit any municipality with 10,000 more population or more to not allow any single-family residence being built from that day forward.
New bill.
New stuff.
On any
any lot within the city limits.
So it would mean changing the zoning from any single-family property
like SFR 6
to fourplexes.
Multifamily.
So what about our Southwest Medford plan that's already platted and in place? Would they be able to?
I wouldn't know.
They may be in there. They probably.
Yeah.
But they probably would get to finish.
I would hope they'd get to finish it out.
Otherwise, we're really changing.
But what about after that?
Well, just think about what you're saying. That any new construction
has to be a fourplex.
Would have to be a 2, 3, or fourplex.
Fourplex.
On any lot. That wouldn't make any sense. You couldn't.
Well, Pete, a lot of things that they do in Salem don't make a lot of sense. I mean, you're right. It doesn't make any sense.
Lots would have to be bigger.
Well, they'd have to change.
It would totally change the way the real estate market kind of even operates.
Well, change the dimensions of the lots when they
absolutely
submit it. Everything could change.
Yeah. Well, Ashland, we're going to sell in Ashland. I've been telling this one. I've got a client. We're ready. He's getting closer to do it. The new ordinance, tiny lots with the house and the land. You can take a 0.15 acre lot, divide it 3 ways, and sell the land and the house 200 square feet with the land.
Oh, wow.
To get home ownership, to get people to buy
Zero
into
lot
it rather
lines?
than nothing. Yep. They're the same lot. They're all together. So you're going to see more of that. But what you say would really be strange. I mean, you can add additional dwelling units.
Oh.
That's what we're talking about so much. But this would change the total thing of what Sal is saying. If you want to have a lot, you have to have at least, you say, 4 units on. If that would pass, I would. Well, we'll see how good the real estate lobbyist will be on this particular one, because that would be a huge issue.
That of course is subject to change.
Yeah,
that's
I understand.
That's the first salvo out of the ship.
Interesting, isn't that? Yeah. What people come up with as ideas. One of the things that I wish that you didn't get that I know that you wanted to do for many years was when the legislature passed a bill and it's written up, the Oregon Revised Statutes. Who writes those things? They may change the intent of the legislature, that you wanted them to come back and say, is this what we intended to do? And that never, ever got through. I always wish that was one thing that would have passed when you were there.
Well, there's a couple things. That was one of them, because I wanted legislative oversight of administrative rules, because, I could give you a bill and you could change that through administrative rules, change the original intent of that legislation.
Absolutely.
And I always wanted that oversight, but that never came to fruition. In fact, I never even received a hearing on it. So.
And sunsetting of bills, time's expired on them. That doesn't even happen much anymore, does it?
Well, I think that all bills should have a sunset on them.
Yeah.
And that's because then you revisit it. It's like Senate Bill 100, which is the sacred cow for the
land use
for the land use in the state of Oregon, which I might add is very, very interesting. But that particular bill should have had a sunset in it so we could reevaluate and see exactly what we have and what we want. Because what we've done now is we passed a bill and said, okay, protect our property, protect the lands that we feel is sacred to the state of Oregon, and then we threw it on the table and let the bureaucrats write all the rules.
They didn't write the rules.
And some of these rules are just, they defy logic.
And it's funny, we've been dealing with them now since 1970, and they still bring them up all the time. You're still dealing with them in the cities, aren't you? You go to those meetings, there's still the urban reserves and all those kinds of things that are out there where we're going to go in the future. Because people are coming here, I don't know where we're going to house them or where we're going to put them or what they're going to be in. But they are coming here.
And the reserves, we've just gone through that regional problem solving and the expansion of our UGBs, and we're going to fill those up. I mean, they're going to fill up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, RPS process, I remember when that first started, they said it'd take 2 years. And what did it take?
12 years.
Yeah,
it's still not all the T's crossed and I's
They started that when Sal was still
I was on the city council.
Right, yeah.
And they end up basically when he's retiring from the legislature.
And
That's
Jackson
really funny.
County really is out in front of the rest of the state of Oregon, and having accomplished that, they really did a good job. That tells you we have on smaller areas, and it took us 12 years, and we got done before.
There was just some silliness that went on. They wouldn't let the LCDC sit at the table there for a while, and of course then we're making up ideas without having them at the table to put the input on, saying no, you can't do that. Yeah. So then we end up going. It was just a joke.
Nothing ever. It's crazy how things go. We're with Sal Esquivel and Jan Esquivel today on the Real Estate Show. Sal retiring from the legislature, ends his career there, and they're both heading off to Idaho. Our last segment, let them say whatever they want. What the heck? They're leaving town. We'll be right back. The Real Estate Show continues. And welcome back to the Real Estate Show here on KCMX News Media 880. Pete Belcaster and Joe Brett with you. Don't forget, you can check out any of our past shows at realestateshowOregon.com. You can sign up for our newsletter there as well. Lots of good information comes out every week on that. We give you the weekly stats, what's going on in the market in Jackson, Josephine County, and we learn a lot from that, don't we? What's happening? A lot of activity, and key boxes are still being opened. It's the holidays. You'd think people wouldn't do that, but nope.
I sent out a couple new leads today.
It's amazing.
Get right back on that horse.
It's there's a lot of activity, a lot of people out there interested. Anyway, Sal and Jan Esquivel, we're both real estate brokers, as we mentioned earlier in our show. Back in their days, what was your last? You were with
Esquivel and Associates, I think, at the end.
You had your own at the end of your time there.
Yeah,
you sold a lot of stuff over the years, huh?
Sold a few.
Yeah, here just well, it hasn't changed much. You still do the same thing. You got to go talk to people and that kind of thing. And I'm sure you're there. You two are going to Idaho. You bought land there 4 years ago, right? About that time.
Just about.
It's out in the boonies, right?
Well, it's not really. I mean, we have privacy, but we're not isolated.
Okay.
We promised our kids, who are, of course, all adults, but we promised them that we wouldn't isolate ourselves. So we purchased 53 acres in northern Idaho. We're about 25 miles north or southeast of Sandpoint, Idaho. So we're right down along Lake Pend Oreille.
Oh, wow.
We don't have lake frontage, but we're close, and heavily timbered property in a gated community, if you can imagine. Talk about land use laws, And we've got close neighbors. We've got neighbors within quarter of a mile. We can't see them, but we know they're there.
So it's not true that Sal wanted to go isolate himself from the rest of the world, from never to be heard from again, right? He didn't want to do that.
I think it's possible, though. Although the mayor position in Clark Fork, Idaho, comes up every 2 years. So I'm waiting. I don't know if you have to be inside the city limits or not, but no. So
no way.
There might be more hope for your positive influence in Clark Fork more than in Salem. So keep an open mind.
That's true. It's a very conservative area. Beautiful people, beautiful country. The little town has about 530 people. They graduate about 18 kids a year. From their high school.
As I tell people and clients, as we age and we change our life, it's the next great adventure for you both, and you certainly deserve that. All the things that you've done and supported. I can't imagine how many dinners you've gone to, speeches you've given, talks you've given, phone conversation with constituents, and all the things that it takes to be successful at it. And you two were great examples of that, right, Joe? I mean, I can think of anybody. More deserving of
a lot of time
things.
and effort and service greatly appreciated. I'd say that to all of our representatives and all the folks that throw their hat in the ring and step up to lead us and to make tough decisions at the municipal level, at the state level, and beyond.
Yeah. So, anything you want to say? I mean, you're kind of out of here in another few days, few weeks. So.
Well, January 13th at midnight.
January
Pete,
13th.
But who's counting?
Yeah, no,
right?
at midnight. No, that's 3 weeks, 4 days, 26 hours.
Exactly. Yeah.
It down.
And there is about 12 hours in there that no one will be in control of the state of Oregon. So I'd kind of like your listeners to know that. Between midnight. On January 13th and about 10 a.m. on January 14th. There's no one in charge, guys, so just go for it.
Nobody in office.
I'll sleep better that night, personally.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That might be a good one. So, I've always admired you so many times. Known you, the best part is that you're flexible and you cared about people and all those things that made you, I think,
Well, I've made a lot of friends in the legislature, and they're not all Republicans. I have some very good friends that are Democrats. Peter Buckley and I got along extremely well.
Yes, you did.
And then Brad Witt and he's from Columbia County. He's a Democrat out of there. In fact, we just went on a hunting trip in Montana together. So, great guy. Just really enjoy those people because they're good people.
You weren't the partisan. I mean, the partisanship has changed over the years. That's probably been the biggest thing for you, hasn't it? Don't you think?
Divided.
Yeah,
that's something I've noticed. When I first came to the legislature, it was a different game. Today, I mean, it's hard to even get to know these people because they don't want to talk to you.
Yeah, and I don't get that.
I don't understand that, but I mean, that's the way it is. When I first started, my second or third time in term, we had people would come in and talk to me that were new Democrats, say, how do we reach across the aisle? How do we get along? They don't even know these people now.
That's reflected in our entire national culture, our national political culture, and we've got to find our way past that.
Yeah.
We watched it. We watched it change from like we've said over the last 15 years. When we first went up, and you were talking about how many parties and dinners and stuff. Yeah. Well, there were often times when you would go to 2 receptions and a dinner in one night, and people may think that was extravagant. But the good part about it is that you intermingled with all the other representatives. It was not partisan. No one had parties just for Republicans or just for Democrats. They were put on by the lobby, most of them. And but it was a great time to get to know people, to know that somebody had children the same age as yours, or had a situation that was something you could relate to. And over the course of time, we saw that diminish. And when the law was changed, and I don't remember what year it was, but when
by Merkley.
Yeah, Merkley changed the ruling that said you could only have $50 a year from a lobbyist. Well, then that just wiped stuff out. And so we stopped socializing. And then the only time you saw any of these people was either when you were in committee or on the floor. There are many, many people up there who, we made some wonderful friends, and some of them are leaving the same time as us, and we'll continue those friendships. But there were a lot of people whose wives or husbands we never met.
Never even met them,
because of the change that was made, and it was a drastic change. And personally, I always felt that it was a bit intentional to stop the intermingling so that the leaders of the opposing parties had more control over their legislators.
Too bad.
Isn't that too bad? I mean, those are the things that you hate to hear.
And those are the bridges we need to build. And you can't build them on the floor. That's
well, you can't build them with the restrictions that are in place now. I mean, it'll be almost impossible. Now, what we'd do is we'd try to invite some Republicans and Democrats to go out to dinner together, and kind of like everyone pays for their own way, but still. That's good, because at least they'd get to find out that so and so over here is just really a down to earth person.
See, it comes down to personal interaction. Right. You see, that's what's missing. Therefore, we have discourse, social media involved, and
what I'm saying is, I'm saying the ideology dictating to the individual instead of the individual dictating to the ideology.
Yeah,
and that's the wrong path.
Not what we founded our country on that principle, right. Not at all.
It's really the. Oh, go ahead.
Before we run out of time, I was privileged to sit next to Sal and Jan at the Eagle Point Veterans Ceremony Memorial Day, where Sal and Senator White and I was fortunate enough to speak. And he's been a great champion of our veterans' causes. We've had a number of them here in our own backyard and beyond. And I personally appreciate that greatly, and I was very proud and very pleased to have you as neighbors that Eagle Point Day last May.
Yeah, and all the people that you've helped, the constituents who've called. I mean, must be thousands of people who've you've answered their call.
Myself as well, with the DHS questions a year and a half ago that I got some really great counseling and guidance on.
Yeah. Well, and we wish Kim Wallen, who's taking your place, so we wish her well, and hopefully we'll get her on one of these days talking about some of these issues as well.
The real sad point about the veterans is that the Vietnam veterans, combat veterans, will all be gone when Gene and I leave the legislature. Okay. Because when I started, there was 4 of us. Okay. Doc Bates was a Vietnam combat veteran. Of course, he passed away. Dennis Richardson, who's now Secretary of State. Myself and Gene Wisnett out of Sun River. Well, Gene and I are retiring, so the legislature has not one Vietnam veteran, combat veteran in it now.
Well, it's called evolution, and the way it goes, as we go along. Well, we're out of time, so we got to go. So I just thank you for your service. Thank you for what you've done for people in Medford, and gosh, we wish you well, and keep in touch, okay? And the best to you both. Thank you for that.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
That's going to do it for the Real Estate Show today. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next Saturday with you as well. We hope you have a wonderful weekend. Happy New Year to you. We'll see you next Saturday here on the Real Estate Show.